In the merciless desert, where death is just another promise whispered by the wind, a woman runs for her life. But what awaits her at the end of her escape is not freedom. It's him, a man shaped by shadows and war, exiled for defying his tribe, marked by secrets no one dares to uncover. She invades the forbidden sanctuary, and one look is enough to ignite between them a desire as dangerous as the hatred of those who hunt her. Between the sacred and the profane, between fear and temptation, begins a passion capable of destroying everything that remains of their souls. If intense and unexpected love stories like this touch your heart, subscribe to this channel and comment on what you thought. Every day we post new plots that move and surprise. Discover now the romance that no one dared to live. The asphalt burned under her bare feet as Amanda ran through the deserted streets of North Philadelphia. It was almost 3 in the morning, and sweat mixed with tears of desperation that she could no longer contain. Each breath burned in her lungs. Each step reminded her of the pain she felt throughout her body, still fresh marks from the last beating she had taken. There was no going back. After 5 years being the property of men who had purchased her when she was still underage, after 5 years pretending she felt nothing while they used her as merchandise, she had finally found the courage to escape. The problem was that men like Victor Stone didn't accept losing their investments. She knew it was only a matter of hours before his henchmen found her, and the fate awaiting her would be worse than death. Victor had tentacles spread throughout the city, controlling everything from drug spots to massage parlors, and had police officers in his pocket. For him, a fugitive girl was a matter of honor. Amanda turned down a dark corner and tripped on a loose manhole cover. She fell hard, scraping her knees on the rough asphalt, and for a moment thought about giving up. But then she heard the rumble of engines approaching, male voices shouting her name in the distance, and her survival instinct spoke louder. She got up, stumbling, and ran toward an abandoned building complex that rose like a scar in the middle of the neighborhood. It was an old textile factory that had closed in the 90s, a labyrinth of dark corridors and empty rooms that served as a refuge for homeless people and drug users. She had known that place since childhood, when she still lived with her grandmother in the nearby community. Before everything fell apart, she ran up the cracked concrete steps, looking for a place where she could hide until dawn. It was on the 5th floor, in a room that must have once been an administrative office, that she saw him. He was sitting on the floor, back against the wall, with a laptop open in front of him. The bluish light from the screen illuminated a face that made her stop at the door, breathless. He was definitely not a homeless person. His features were aristocratic, the square jaw covered by a well-groomed beard, dark hair combed back. He wore a black dress shirt with rolled-up sleeves, dress pants, and Italian shoes that must have cost more than minimum wage. But there was something disturbing about that elegant figure sitting on the floor of an abandoned building. His hands had blood spatters, his dark eyes shone with a dangerous intensity, and beside him was a pistol. When he noticed her presence, he slowly raised his gaze. It was like being punched in the stomach. His eyes were the color of pure coffee, almost black, and they stared at her with a mixture of surprise and something darker, more primitive. For an endless moment, they just looked at each other, her at the door, him on the floor, while the distant sound of sirens began to echo through the night. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice deep and controlled, but with a roughness that made her skin tingle. "Neither should you," she replied, trying to sound braver than she felt. He closed the laptop with a precise movement and stood up. He was tall, must have been about 6'6", and each movement was calculated like that of a predator. Amanda took a step back, but he raised his hand in a kind of peace sign. "Who's chasing you?" he asked, putting the gun in the holster under his jacket. The question caught her by surprise. He must have heard the engines, the voices. She hesitated because admitting she was running away would be confessing she was a criminal, at least in the eyes of the law. But there was something about the way he looked at her that made her feel he would understand. "Very dangerous men," she murmured. "All men are dangerous," he replied, taking a step toward her. "The question is, are they more dangerous than me?" Amanda felt a shiver run down her spine. It wasn't exactly fear, it was something more confusing, warmer. This man radiated power and danger in almost tangible waves. But there was also something about him that made her want to get closer instead of running away. "Who are you?" she whispered. He smiled, but it was a humorless smile. Someone who's also hiding. The sound of heavy footsteps on the floor below made them both alert. He grabbed her hand with a quickness that surprised her, and the touch was like an electric shock. His fingers were calloused but gentle, and he pulled her to the back of the room, where an emergency staircase led to the roof. "Go up," he ordered in a low voice. "And you? I'll give your friends a warm welcome." She saw his expression harden, saw his hand instinctively move to the weapon, and understood that this man was not afraid to kill. In fact, from the blood on his hands, he had probably already done so tonight. "No," she said, surprising herself. "Come with me." He stared at her with an intensity that made the air between them vibrate. "Why?" Because I don't want you to get hurt because of me." It was a stupid answer, and she knew it. She didn't know him, didn't even know his name. But something deep in her chest tightened at the idea of seeing him face Victor's men alone. For a moment that seemed like an eternity. He studied her in silence. Then he picked up the laptop and followed her up the stairs, his steps as silent as a cat's. On the roof, the city stretched out before them like a sea of lights. She could see the illuminated slums on the hillside, the luxurious buildings of downtown shining in the distance, and there in the middle, the two of them, fugitives in the Philadelphia dawn. "What's your name?" he asked, taking off his jacket and offering it to her, who only then realized she was shivering with cold. "Amanda." She accepted the garment, and the masculine scent that came from the fine fabric almost made her close her eyes. It was expensive, sophisticated, completely different from any smell she knew. "Jason," he said. "Jason Reynolds Stone." The last name made her choke. Stone. Like Victor Stone. Was it a coincidence? Or was it, "Are you related to Victor Stone?" she asked, her voice coming out higher than intended. His expression darkened in a way that made her take a step back. "My older brother." The world seemed to stop. The air became thin, and she felt as if the ground beneath her feet had disappeared. The man who had saved her, for whom she felt an inexplicable and frightening attraction, was the brother of the monster who had kept her captive for 5 years. "You knew," she said, her voice barely coming out. "You knew who I was." "No," he replied, and there was a raw sincerity in his voice that made her believe. "I have no idea who you are. I just know you're running from something, and that you have eyes that make me forget I should be smarter." She wanted to run, wanted to scream, wanted to wake up from that nightmare. But at the same time, a dark and confused part of her wanted to stay there, wanted to understand why the brother of her torturer made her feel things she had never felt. "Why were you in that building?" she asked, trying to buy time to process the information. "Business meeting that went wrong," he said, unconsciously touching the gun. "Very wrong. You killed someone." It wasn't a question. She saw the confirmation in his eyes before he even answered. Someone who deserved to die. The way he said it, the controlled coldness in his voice, should have terrified her. Instead, she felt something warm spread through her chest. There was justice in that coldness. There was protection in that violence. "What do you do for a living, Jason?" He hesitated, as if deciding how much of the truth to tell. "I work with problem resolution, problems that the police can't or won't solve. A killer, a man who does what needs to be done." She should be running. She should be screaming. But instead she took a step toward him, studying his face in the light of the street lamps. "Why are you different from him?" she asked. "Why are you different from Victor?" "Because I choose who deserves to die," he answered, his voice low and dangerous. "And he kills those who can't defend themselves." It was a subtle difference, but an important one. Jason killed for justice. Victor killed for pleasure and power. Jason protected. Victor destroyed. "Would you take me back to him?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. He was silent for so long that she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, there was something different in his voice, something softer and more dangerous at the same time. "No." "Why?" "Because I looked into your eyes and saw the same thing I see in the mirror every morning." "What is it?" "Someone who survived what they shouldn't have survived." The answer hit her like a punch to the chest. He understood. In some impossible way, this dangerous and mysterious man understood the pain she carried, the strength she had needed to find not to break completely. "I need to leave the city," she said. "I need to disappear before he finds me." "Where do you want to go?" "It doesn't matter. Far, very far." Jason studied her in silence, and she could see the thoughts moving behind those dark eyes. Finally, he took the cell phone from his pocket and dialed a number. "Matt, it's me. I need you to prepare the Hampton house." "Yes, now." "No, I can't explain over the phone." He hung up and looked at her. "Do you trust me?" It was an impossible question. She didn't know him. He was the brother of her tormentor, and he had blood on his hands. But there was something in the way he looked at her, something in the protection he offered without asking for anything in return, that made her nod. "Then let's go," he said, extending his hand. "Before my brother discovers I was here tonight." When she touched his hand again, she felt the same electric shock, the same feeling of being on the edge of a precipice. But this time, instead of backing away, she allowed herself to fall. The house in the Hamptons rose like a modern fortress on the rocks, with mirrored glass that reflected the rough sea of dawn. Jason had driven in silence along the empty roads of Long Island, and Amanda had spent the 2 hours of the trip studying his tense profile in the light of the dashboard. Every curve of his face seemed sculpted for war, but there were moments when she caught a glimpse of vulnerability, a shadow of pain that he tried to hide. When they finally stopped in the underground garage, she felt as if she had entered another world. The place was luxurious in a discreet way, all in shades of gray and black, with artwork on the walls and furniture that must have cost a fortune. But there was something disturbing about the perfection. No personal photos, no trace of real life, as if it were a setting set up to impress, not a home. "Do you want to take a shower?" he asked, leading her to a room on the second floor. "There are clothes in the closet. Matt always leaves some pieces for emergencies." She nodded, unable to speak. The reality of what was happening was beginning to hit. She was in the house of a man who killed people for money, brother of the monster who had tortured her for years, and she felt safer there than anywhere she had ever been. The bathroom was larger than the room where she had slept for 5 years in Victor's house. The bathtub could accommodate 2 people. There were very expensive beauty products on the shelves, and towels so soft they seemed like clouds. When she finally stepped into the shower, she let the hot water wash away not only the dirt and sweat, but also 5 years of humiliation. For a few precious minutes, she pretended she was a normal person in a normal life, and that the dangerous man downstairs cared about her for reasons that didn't involve pity. When she came out, she found clothes on the bed, jeans that fit perfectly, a soft cotton blouse, and even new lingerie, still with the tag. The idea of Jason choosing those intimate pieces for her made her face heat up in a way that surprised her. She went downstairs barefoot, following the smell of coffee. She found him in the American kitchen, still dressed in the same clothes from the night before, but now without the shirt. His bare torso revealed muscles defined by exercise and violence, scars that told stories of pain, and a tribal tattoo that extended from the shoulder to the right elbow. He had his back to her, stirring something on the stove, and she took the opportunity to study every line of that body that radiated masculine power. "Coffee?" he asked without turning around, as if he knew she was there. "Please." He served 2 cups, and when he turned to hand her hers, his eyes traveled over her body, dressed in the clothes he had chosen. There was something possessive in that look, something that made her feel naked despite being completely covered. "The clothes look good," he said, his voice hoarser than normal. "How did you know my size?" A dangerous smile curved his lips. "I know many things about you, Amanda." The way he said her name, loading each syllable with meaning, sent a shiver down her spine. "What do you mean?" Instead of answering, he took the laptop he had brought from the abandoned building and opened it on the kitchen counter. The screen showed files, documents, photos, and in the center of it all, a folder with her name. "3 months ago, I received a job proposal," he said, taking a sip of coffee without taking his eyes off her. "Someone wanted me to find a specific person, a girl who had disappeared from official records 5 years ago, but whom someone very powerful was desperately looking for." Her heart raced. "Who?" "Your father." The cup slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor, spreading coffee and porcelain everywhere. Jason didn't move, just continued to observe her with those eyes that seemed to see through her soul. "My father died when I was 15, she said, her voice coming out trembling. Michael Hayes is very much alive, Amanda, and very rich, and very desperate to find the daughter he lost when she was kidnapped leaving school. The world spun around her. Amanda leaned on the counter trying to process the words. Her father, alive, looking for her. But then why had he never found her? Why had she spent 5 years in hell while he— "You're lying," she whispered. "I don't lie about work," said Jason, turning the laptop so she could see the screen. Michael Hayes, CEO of Hayes Construction, one of the largest contractors in the country, lost his wife in a car accident when his daughter was 14. A year later, the daughter disappeared. He spent a fortune searching, hired the best detectives, but the trails always led to dead ends. She looked at the screen and her world collapsed. There was a photo of a man in his 50s, graying hair, green eyes like hers. He was older, thinner, but it was him. It was her father. "No, it can't be," she murmured, tears beginning to flow. "He died. They told me he died in the accident with my mother. That's why they took me to that orphanage. That's why—" The truth hit her like a high-speed train. There was no orphanage. There never had been. She had been kidnapped outside of school and sold to Victor when she was still a minor. And during all those years, her father had been alive, looking for her. "Why didn't you hand me over to him?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Why didn't you collect the reward?" Jason approached, stepping on the shards of porcelain without caring, until he was close enough for her to feel the heat of his body. "Because 3 days before finding you, I discovered something else." He clicked on another file, and the screen showed bank documents, transfers, telephone records. Victor didn't act alone when he kidnapped you. He had help from someone inside your father's own company. Someone who knew your routine, who knew exactly where you would be. Who? Olivia Bennett, your father's executive secretary for 15 years. The woman he trusted most, who took care of his schedule, who knew all the details of the family's personal life. Jason paused, his eyes fixed on her face. The woman he married 6 months after your disappearance. Amanda felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. The stepmother. Her father had remarried to the woman who had orchestrated her kidnapping. She had me kidnapped to be with my father, and with the inheritance that would be yours when you turned 18. $50 million that your mother left in a trust fund. Her legs failed, and she would have fallen if Jason hadn't caught her in his arms. His touch was firm, protective, and for a moment she allowed herself to lean on his bare chest, feeling his breath against her hair. "Why are you telling me this?" she whispered against his skin. "Because you deserve to know the truth." His voice came out low, a deep vibration she felt through his body. "And because I'm going to help you get your life back." She raised her face to look at him, and the intensity of his dark eyes almost made her forget to breathe. "Why? You don't even know me." "That's not true." His hands rose to frame her face, his thumbs caressing her cheeks wet with tears. "I spent 2 months studying every detail of your life. I know you liked to paint watercolors when you were a teenager. I know you had a cat named Romeo. I know you wanted to be a veterinarian. I know you were the best student in your class in literature." His voice grew hoarser. "I know you were a happy girl, full of dreams, until my brother destroyed all that. Jason, I also know that you are the strongest person I have ever met, because you survived 5 years of hell and can still trust someone. You can still look at me, knowing who I am, and not run away." She couldn't look away. Something was happening between them, something that went far beyond physical attraction. It was recognition, connection, 2 wounded souls meeting in the middle of the storm. "I should be afraid of you," she murmured. "You should, but I'm not. Does that make you braver or more stupid than me?" She smiled for the first time in years, a genuine smile that completely transformed her face. "Probably more stupid." Jason laughed, a low, sexy sound that made her stomach contract. "Definitely more stupid." The tension between them was almost tangible, electricity in the air that made every nerve ending of hers vibrate. He was still holding her face between his hands, and she could see the internal struggle in his dark eyes. He wanted to kiss her, she knew that, and God, how she wanted to be kissed by him. But then his cell phone rang, breaking the moment like glass. Jason backed away with a low curse and answered, "Matt?" His expression changed instantly. "When? Are you sure?" "Shit. Okay, Keep surveillance and let me know if there's any movement." He hung up and turned to her, his face tense. "We have a problem." "What?" "Victor discovered you escaped and discovered I was in that building last night." Her blood froze. "How?" "Security cameras from a nearby gas station caught my car. He must be putting two and two together right now. He's going to come after me. He's going to come after both of us." Jason ran his hand through his hair, clearly thinking of strategies. Amanda watched him move around the kitchen like a caged predator and understood that he was preparing for war. "Jason," she said, touching his arm, "you don't need to protect me. I can leave, disappear again." "No." The answer came out hard, definitive. "You're not going to spend another day running. But if you stay with me, you'll have to fight against your own brother." He stopped moving and stared at her with an intensity that made the air heat up. "Amanda, my brother stopped being family the day he started trafficking children. The day he touched you, he signed his own death sentence." The coldness in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, she felt something warm spread through her chest. Protection. For the first time in 5 years, someone was willing to fight for her. "What are we going to do?" "First, we're going to find your father. He deserves to know you're alive." Jason picked up his cell phone again. "And then, we're going to end this once and for all." While he made calls, organizing a safe meeting with Michael Hayes, Amanda looked out the window at the rough sea. Outside, a storm was approaching, darkening the sky with heavy clouds. But for the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of the darkness, because now she had Jason by her side, and he was more dangerous than any storm. The meeting was scheduled for late afternoon at a discreet restaurant in Long Island. Jason had insisted on choosing the location, a place with several exits and where he had contacts. Amanda spent the entire day trying to imagine what it would be like to see her father after 5 years believing he was dead. What it would be like to look into his eyes and discover that during all the time she was suffering, he was living a new life with the woman who had orchestrated her kidnapping. "You don't have to do this today," Jason said for the 10th time, adjusting the pearl necklace on her neck. He had insisted that she dress well for the meeting, had bought expensive and elegant clothes that made her look like the businessman's daughter she had always been. "We can wait a few more days." "No." She looked in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. The navy blue dress enhanced her green eyes. Her hair was styled in soft waves, and the makeup hid the most visible scars. She looked like the 15-year-old Amanda, but with the strength and determination that only suffering could teach. "I need to do this now, before I lose my courage." Jason approached from behind her, and in the mirror she could see how good they looked together. He wore an impeccable dark suit, his hair combed back, looking exactly what he was, a dangerous man disguised as a businessman. When he placed his hands on her shoulders, Amanda felt the strength and protection that emanated from him. "Remember what we talked about?" he asked, his dark eyes meeting hers in the reflection. "Don't mention you. Don't talk about Victor yet. Don't tell details about where I've been." She took a deep breath. "First find out what he knows about Olivia. And if anything goes wrong, I leave through the kitchen and meet you in the car." She turned in his arms and suddenly they were very close, too close. "Jason, what if he doesn't want to see me? What if he's happy with his new life?" His hands rose to frame her face, exactly as he had done the morning before. "Impossible. You're his daughter. A father's love doesn't die, Amanda. How can you be so sure?" His gaze became distant for a moment, as if he were visiting painful memories. "Because I know what it's like to live with the weight of not having protected those I should have." There was a story there, a pain he carried, but this was not the moment to explore it. Amanda raised her hand and touched his face, feeling the rough beard against her palm. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything." "Don't thank me yet," he said, his voice hoarse. "It's not over yet." The tension between them was almost unbearable. She wanted him to kiss her, wanted to lose herself in those strong arms and forget the world outside. But then his cell phone rang, breaking the moment. "Matt confirmed," he said after answering. "Your father just arrived at the restaurant. He's alone." Her stomach twisted with nervousness. "Let's go." The trip to Long Island was tense and silent. Jason drove with full attention, his eyes constantly checking the mirrors, looking for signs that they were being followed. When they finally stopped in the restaurant parking lot, he held her hand for a moment. Remember, I'll be at the back table where I can see you all the time. Any sign of danger, anything that makes you uncomfortable, you look at me and I'll take care of everything." She nodded, trying to control her breathing. When she got out of the car, her legs were shaky, but she forced a calm expression. She couldn't appear to be the frightened victim she had been. She needed to look like the strong woman she had become. The restaurant was elegant, but not ostentatious, with tables spread across different environments that allowed private conversations. Amanda followed the maître to a table near the windows, where a man was sitting with his back to her. Michael Hayes was thinner than in the photo, his hair grayer. But when he turned and saw her face, the expression of shock was so intense that she immediately knew there was no doubt about who she was. "My God," he whispered, getting up unsteadily. "Amanda? Hi, Dad." For a moment, they simply looked at each other. 5 years of pain, guilt, and longing filled the space between them. Then Michael took a step toward her, hesitant, as if he feared she was a mirage. "Is it really you?" he asked, his voice breaking. "My daughter, is it really you?" She nodded, and that was enough. He pulled her into a desperate hug, holding her against his chest as if he wanted to make sure she was real. Amanda smelled the familiar scent of his cologne, felt the sobs he was trying to hide, and for a moment she was once again the 15-year-old girl who ran into her father's arms when she had nightmares. "I looked," he whispered in her ear. "I looked for you every day. I never stopped looking." "I know, Dad, I know." When they finally separated, both had tears in their eyes. They sat down, and Michael couldn't stop looking at her, as if he wanted to memorize every detail. "Where have you been?" he asked. "What happened to you? Who took you?" Amanda took a deep breath. This was the hard part. "They were very dangerous men, Dad. They kept me prisoner. For a long time." His expression darkened in a frightening way. "Who? Tell me the names and I swear." "I can't, not yet. It's too dangerous." "Amanda, I have money. I have influence. I can protect you. I can make them pay for what they did." "I know you can." She touched his hand on the table. "But first I need to know some things. About Olivia." The name of his wife made him pull back slightly. "Olivia? What does she have to do with this? Do you trust her completely?" "Of course I trust her. She's my wife." "She was the one who supported me during the hardest years, when I was destroyed by your loss." He paused, studying her face. "Why are you asking about her?" Amanda felt her heart race. Her father loved Olivia. He believed in the woman who had conspired against her. How could she destroy his life by telling the truth? "Dad, do you have access to the company's banking records? To employees' personal accounts?" "I do, but why?" "I need you to check Olivia's movements over the last 5 years, especially large cash deposits or transfers to suspicious accounts." His expression became confused, then worried. "Amanda, you're scaring me. What's going on?" Before she could answer, she saw a movement at the entrance of the restaurant that made her blood freeze. 3 men in dark suits entered, and she immediately recognized one of them. Derek, Victor's right-hand man. They were searching for something, or someone. Discreetly, she looked at Jason, who had already noticed the presence of the men. He made an almost imperceptible sign, indicating that she should continue normally, but prepare to leave quickly. "Dad," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. "I need to leave now." "What?" "But you just arrived." "I can't explain, but I'm in danger. The men who kidnapped me discovered where I am." Michael turned to look in the direction she had indicated, and his expression hardened when he saw the armed men spreading through the restaurant. "My God," he murmured. "They came after you." "Dad, listen, I'll have to leave through the kitchen. I want you to stay here, finish dinner normally, and then go home. Don't mention that you saw me to anyone, not even to Olivia." "Not yet. I won't let you go alone." "I'm not alone." She looked quickly at Jason, who was getting up with calculated movements. "I have someone protecting me." "Who? Who is this man?" "Someone I can trust." She stood up, kissed her father's forehead. "I love you, Dad. And I'll come back to you, I promise. But now I have to go." "Amanda, wait." But she was already moving, walking casually toward the kitchen. She noticed that Jason was positioning himself to intercept Victor's men, creating a distraction so she could escape. That's when she saw Olivia Bennett entering the restaurant. The woman was exactly as Amanda remembered, platinum blonde, elegant, with a cold smile that never reached her eyes. She swept the environment with her gaze until she found Michael at the table, and the expression of surprise that crossed her face was quickly replaced by something much more dangerous. Olivia had followed her husband. She knew about the meeting. Amanda froze for a second, seeing the trap closing around her. Olivia was speaking quickly on her cell phone, probably alerting Victor about the exact location. The armed men were approaching her father's table, and Jason was surrounded, trying to create an exit for her. That's when Olivia saw her. The recognition was instantaneous, and the hatred that shone in the older woman's eyes was like a slap. For 5 years, Olivia had lived as a queen, owner of Michael's fortune and heart, and now the legitimate daughter had returned to claim what was hers. "Michael!" shouted Olivia, running toward the table. "Michael, get out of there now!" The confusion that followed was like an explosion. Michael stood up, confused, trying to understand why his wife was there. Victor's men began to move more quickly, and Jason pulled out his gun. The first shot echoed through the restaurant like thunder, and all the people began to scream and run. Amanda saw Jason hit one of the men in the shoulder, saw chaos set in, saw Olivia pull a small pistol from her purse and point it not at Jason, but at her. 5 years, Olivia shouted over the noise. 5 years of peace and you come back to ruin everything. The second shot came from Olivia, but missed Amanda by inches, hitting a passing waiter. Michael shouted his wife's name, still not understanding what was happening, still believing she was trying to protect him. "Olivia, what the hell are you doing?" he yelled. "Protecting our life," she shouted back. "Protecting everything we've built." It was then that the truth finally revealed itself to Michael. The coldness in his wife's eyes, the gun in her hand pointed at his own daughter, the perfect coordination with the armed men. He understood that the woman he loved had been responsible for Amanda's kidnapping. "My God," he whispered. It was you who had my daughter taken." Olivia laughed, a bitter and desperate sound. "It was her or me, Michael, her or our future together." Jason took advantage of the distraction to get closer to Amanda, but Derek and the third man blocked the path. She was trapped between the tables, with Olivia a few feet away, still pointing the gun. "You should have died years ago," Olivia hissed. "Should have given up, accepted your fate." "My fate is not to be a victim," Amanda replied, her voice firmer than she felt. "And you will pay for everything you did. Not if I kill you first." Olivia pulled the trigger, but this time the shot didn't come from her gun. Jason had found an angle and fired first, hitting her hand and sending the pistol flying. Olivia screamed in pain and anger, holding her bleeding hand. "It's over," said Jason, now free to move. He positioned himself between Amanda and Olivia, the gun pointed at the injured woman. "It's over, Olivia." But it wasn't over. Derek was still standing and still had a gun, and he was pointing it not at Jason, but at Michael. "Nobody moves," he shouted, "or the old man dies." Amanda saw the desperation in her father's eyes, saw Jason calculate the chances of a sure shot, saw Olivia smiling despite the pain, knowing she still had a card to play. "You choose, princess," said Derek. "Come with me now, without resistance, or your daddy becomes fish food." It was the same choice she had made at 15. Sacrifice herself to protect those she loved. But this time it was different. This time she wasn't alone. This time she had Jason. And Jason would never let anyone he loved be taken again. Time seemed to slow down. Amanda could hear her own breathing, the muffled screams of customers hiding under tables, the distant sound of sirens approaching. Derek kept the gun steady in Michael's direction, who was pale but determined, as if he finally understood that he was in the middle of a war that had begun 5 years ago. "Don't do it, Amanda," Jason said in a low voice, without taking his eyes off Derek. "Trust me." 2 seconds, princess," shouted Derek. "Decide now or—" The shot came from an unexpected direction. Matt, Jason's trusted man, had entered through the kitchen and shot Derek's arm with precision. The henchman's gun flew away, and Michael threw himself backward, finally safe. But the confusion was far from over. Olivia, even injured, crawled to the fallen pistol and managed to grab it with her left hand. The hatred in her eyes was like liquid fire, years of resentment and greed manifesting in pure fury. "If I can't have everything," she shouted, pointing the wavering gun in Amanda's direction, "then no one will have anything." The shot echoed through the restaurant, but it wasn't Olivia who fired. Jason moved with feline speed, tackled Olivia to the ground, and disarmed her definitively. The woman lay there, sobbing and bleeding, all her elegance and power finally shattered. "My daughter," said Michael, running to Amanda and pulling her into a tight hug. "Are you hurt? Are you okay?" "I'm okay, Dad." She allowed herself to stay in his arms for a moment, feeling the security that only a father could give. But her eyes searched for Jason, who was checking if Olivia and Derek were neutralized. "The police will arrive in less than 5 minutes," said Matt. "We have to go." "No." Amanda separated from her father and looked directly at Jason. "I'm not running anymore. It's over." Jason approached, his face tense. "Amanda, you know who I am. You know what I do. If we stay here when the police arrive, then we'll tell the truth." She took his hand, intertwining their fingers. The whole truth. About what Olivia did, about what Victor did, about everything. "And about me?" She stared at him with a determination he had never seen before. "About you too. About how you saved me, protected me, gave me back my life." Michael observed the interaction between his daughter and that mysterious man, beginning to understand that there was much more between them than just professional protection. "Who is he, Amanda?" he asked. "He's the man I love," she replied without hesitation. Jason looked at her with surprise, and then something much more intense crossed his eyes. "Amanda, it's true." She turned to her father. "Dad, Jason is Victor Stone's brother, the man who kept me captive. But he's different. He's my salvation." "Brother?" Michael tensed. "How can I trust the brother of the man who—" "Because he killed for me," said Amanda, her voice firm. "Because he put his own life at risk to protect me. Because when he discovered the truth about what Victor was doing, he chose the right side." Jason approached Michael, keeping his hands visible. "Mr. Hayes, I know I have no right to ask for your trust. I know that the last name I carry is a condemnation, but I swear by my own mother's memory that I will never let anyone hurt your daughter again." The sirens were very close now. In a matter of minutes, the restaurant would be full of police officers, and they would have to explain everything. Jason took the pistol he had used and handed it to Michael. "If you want to turn me into the police, I understand," he said. "But before that, let me finish what I started." "What do you mean?" asked Amanda. Jason took out his cell phone and dialed a number. When someone answered, he put it on speakerphone. "Victor, it's me." The voice that came from the device was cold, calculating. "Jason, where's my merchandise?" Amanda shuddered at being called that, but Jason squeezed her hand, transmitting strength. "Your merchandise is with me," said Jason, "and it's going to stay with me. You know that can't happen, little brother. That girl is worth a lot of money, and there are very powerful people interested in getting her back. Then you'll have to explain to those powerful people that your merchandise is no longer available." There was a pause, and when Victor spoke again, his voice was loaded with threat. "You're choosing some whore over your own family?" Jason looked at Amanda, and she saw all the determination in the world in his dark eyes. "I'm choosing the woman I love over a monster who happens to share my last name." "Then you've signed your death warrant, and hers too." "Maybe, but you'll have to come get me first. And we both know how that's going to end." Jason hung up and turned to Amanda and Michael. "Now you know everything. Victor won't give up easily, but he won't be able to use his influence freely anymore either. With Olivia and Derek arrested, with the evidence we have of the bank transfers, his empire will begin to crumble." "And you?" asked Amanda. "What's going to happen to you?" "I'll face the consequences of my actions, both the crimes and the right choices." The police arrived like an avalanche, invading the restaurant with guns drawn. Amanda saw Jason raise his hands, saw the police officers surround him, saw handcuffs being placed on the wrists that just minutes before had been caressing her. "Wait!" she shouted, running toward them. "He saved me. He protected me." "Amanda," said Michael, holding her. "Let me handle this." Michael Hayes was a powerful man with connections throughout the city. In the hours that followed, as they gave statements at the police station, he moved every contact he had. Expensive lawyers, prosecutors who owed favors, police chiefs he had known for decades. The story that unfolded was like an earthquake in the New York media. Amanda Hayes' kidnapping 5 years earlier, Olivia Bennett's conspiracy, the connections to the sex trafficking run by Victor Stone. The entire city was shocked by the revelation that one of the most respected families in New York had been the victim of such an intimate and cruel betrayal. Olivia was arrested in the act, and the banking evidence that Jason had collected definitively proved her involvement in the kidnapping. Derek was also detained, and under pressure ended up giving up other members of Victor's organization. But Victor Stone had disappeared. 3 days later, Amanda was in the Hampton house again, looking at the sea through the bedroom window. Jason had been released on high bail that Michael had paid, but he still faced a complex process. He had confessed to some crimes, but his lawyer argued that there were special circumstances, that he had acted to protect a victim and dismantle a criminal organization. "Are you sure?" asked Jason, entering the room. He carried a tray with coffee, and in the last few days he had taken care of her as if she were made of crystal. "Sure of what? That you want to stay with me? That you want to face all this?" He sat on the edge of the bed, his face serious. "Amanda, I could spend years in prison. I might have to make a deal with justice, enter the witness protection program. Your life will never be normal if you stay with me." She turned to face him, and what he saw in her green eyes made him stop breathing. It was no longer the frightened girl he had met in the abandoned building. It was a strong, determined woman who knew exactly what she wanted. "Jason, you gave me back my life. You gave me back my father, my identity, my freedom." She approached, taking his face between her hands. "But more than that, you taught me that I can choose my own destiny, and I choose you. Even knowing everything I've done, even knowing I'm dangerous, especially because of that." She smiled, and it was a smile full of mischief and desire. "Do you think that after everything I've been through, I'm going to want a normal, predictable man? I want you, Jason. All your danger, all your darkness, all your fierce protection." He kissed her then, finally, after days of contained tension. It was a desperate kiss, loaded with love and desire and relief. When they separated, both were breathless. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "From the first moment I saw you, I knew you were going to change my life." "Then change," she murmured, pulling him closer. "Change with me." They made love there, in the golden light of the late afternoon, with the sound of the waves as a soundtrack. It was intense and sweet at the same time, a celebration of everything they had survived, and a promise of everything they would build together. 2 months later, Jason's case was resolved with a deal. He would do community service, would serve justice as a consultant in human trafficking cases, and would be on probation for 3 years. Victor Stone had finally been captured in a joint operation by state and federal police, and his entire organization had been dismantled. Amanda was in the garden of the Hampton house, painting a watercolor of the sunset, when she felt Jason's arms wrap around her waist from behind. "How's it coming along?" he asked, kissing her neck. "It's coming out perfect," she replied, leaning against his firm chest. "Just like everything in our life. No regrets?" "None." She turned in his arms, looking at the face she had learned to love in every detail. "You?" "Just one," he said, serious. "Which one?" "Having taken so long to find you." She laughed, the crystalline sound echoing through the garden. "Nonsense. We found each other exactly when we should have, when we were ready for each other. Amanda? Marry me." It wasn't a question. It was a statement, a certainty, a promise. And she didn't hesitate for even a second. Yes. 6 months later, they married in an intimate ceremony in the same Hampton house, with Michael walking his daughter down the improvised altar on the veranda. Amanda wore a simple white silk dress, and Jason was more handsome than ever in a navy blue suit. During the vows, she promised to love him in all his complexity, to protect him as he protected her, and to build with him a life that was worth every scar they carried. He promised to be her shield against the world, her shelter in any storm, and to love every day of her as if it were the last. When they kissed, sealing the union, the sun set over the sea like a golden blessing. And there, in that perfect moment, Amanda knew she had found not just a husband, but her destiny. Jason was not just the man who had saved her. He was the man with whom she would build an extraordinary life. Because sometimes love is born from the most unlikely circumstances, between the most different people, and become something stronger than any obstacle. Sometimes two wounded souls meet in the darkness and discover that together they can be light. And sometimes, just sometimes, happy endings are real. 5 years later, Amanda was in the same garden, now enlarged and even more beautiful, watching Jason teach their 3-year-old daughter to paint watercolors. The little girl had her mother's green eyes and her father's fierce determination, and when she laughed, the sound filled the whole house with joy. "Daddy, it's not right," said little Emma, frowning. "The sea isn't that color." "And what color is the sea, princess?" asked Jason, with the infinite patience he reserved for his daughter. "The color of Mom's love for you," replied the girl, serious as only children know how to be. Jason looked at Amanda over his daughter's head, and the smile they exchanged was full of complicity and deep happiness. They had built this together, a family, a life, a love that had survived everything and become stronger. "You're right, princess," said Jason, kissing his daughter's forehead. "The sea has exactly the color of Mom's love." And as the sun set once more over the Hamptons, the family that had been born from chaos and violence celebrated another day of perfect peace. Because true love knows no limits, accepts no impossibilities, and always finds a way to transform darkness into light. Amanda and Jason had proven that sometimes the most beautiful fairy tales begin in the darkest places, and that love, when it's real, when it's deep, when it's chosen every day, can truly conquer everything.